Hello, and welcome to this week's Warbot stream. As always, I'm here with Mike.
Hi everybody.
Uh,
I'm uh I'm here to talk about a format I don't play in lieu of people that couldn't be here that do play the format.
yeah, we actually we were hoping to find a guest expert for stream, and we did actually manage to get a lot of help from the manager of Ben Trees. But unfortunately, he wasn't able to join us on stream, so we're going to show his build, but we're going to get to talk about his build, even though we have no idea what we're doing. So it should be a lot of
Yep.
fun.
Yeah. Our backup low diamond expert is our DB man, DB, who is also unavailable today because of work commitments. So yeah, we're winging it.
Gonna be fun.
Oh,
And
Ludwig
next
won a
week,
low diamond quick last week. You're in. Let's go.
I
Let's
think
get
I'm
you on.
actually more of an expert. Actually, I think we were looking at this. I've played two low diamond quicks in total this cycle. Although I do have a 50% win rate, so maybe that makes me an expert, or really lucky. Probably just really lucky.
Yeah, and I don't have my history there, but uh, it's probably fine. Give us Sporer strategy. Oh boy,
That could be fun.
that could be fun. We should do that one week.
So and next week we're still sort of thinking about it, but stay tuned because I think likely instead of doing a quick format, we're gonna do a special episode. So there'll hopefully be more about that later this week in chat. We're still trying to get all the details put together.
Twitch chat told you Giancarlo was bad. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I immediately told you that Giancarlo was just fine and not to worry about it.
Hold on, as long as only right-handed pitching exists, Giancarlo is bad.
Yeah, I mean, like, who needs a Jimmy Fox that can play right field competently? I sure don't.
All right, should we dead ball episode where we talk about Jackson? That could be fun.
Uh, we will absolutely do a Dead Ball episode at some point and have Snailman on to tell stories, and it'll just be it'll be great. The man knows a lot about Dead Ball baseball and is a good storyteller, so I'm looking forward to that.
I think that would be a lot of fun. Yeah. So, all right. So, right, low diamond, much different format than I guess it was iron last week. Little more expensive and tougher to get into. So, you're
A
also
little more
talking about
right-handed pitching.
what? Yeah, and
Wait,
it will.
yeah, yeah, but no, that's right.
Yeah. It'll also be, I guess, a format where we just have a lot less data. So we're going to see that in particular some of the new Negro League cards that just dropped, we have essentially no data on. But because it's not running as often, this is one where we're going to expect a little bigger gaps between sort of the short-term data and the long-term average that you would get.
Yep.
So I'm expecting the model and data to disagree a little bit more. We do also have an updated model this week. So we found a few things that maybe we could improve for some of these formats. We were clearly undervaluing I, for example. So we're now
Yeah,
valuing I a little bit better.
if you couldn't figure that out by watching it, you're not a long-term viewer, so
So now I is being
it's
weighted a little
okay.
bit
We'll
more
catch you up.
strongly than before.
Thank goodness.
Is Pedro
It
good now?
sounds like we've got some volume problems for you, Charles.
For me, okay. Let me see if I can
Is
turn
it
up the volume a
is
little
it
bit.
volume AVC or is it clarity? A little quiet. Okay.
Usually not a problem I have. Let me see if I can fix that. Let's see. Is Pedro good now? Well, Pedro Estacio has also been somewhat visible in low diamond, right?
Uh.
A little bit.
Hmm.
Big
Hmm.
movement.
I'm gonna leave that one alone. I think it would be for the best if we just left it.
Yeah, Pedro Ramos is great in silver. Uh, Pedro Guerrero is great in every format he's eligible, pretty much, right?
It's a lot of good Pedros.
A lot of good. There's a lot of good Pedros. No, actually, I was looking at that. There are two 1985 Pedro Guerreros as well, which is kind of
Why do they
interesting.
do that? Two from the same year.
Yeah, but one
Is
of them
one of
is
them
but one
like
of them is the peak
peak?
night. Yeah, one of them is the peak 1985 Pedro Guerrero.
Okay, so does that mean that that was like also his best year? So we need to have it as a separate thing? I feel like the peaks, if they're labeled for a season, or I mean, is it that's where we took most of this from, or is it that's what we think his actual peak year was, and this is like the card represents kind of his full long peak? Like, help me out. I don't know.
My understanding is that the peak is sort of a souped up version that could be even better than what the player has sustained for a year. Although 1985 does seem to also be by far, the actual Pedro Guerrero best year.
Yep, that sounds right.
Anyway, right. Low diamond. We should get there eventually, right?
We should get there eventually, and also it should go relatively quickly because not knowing much about this, we shouldn't have that much to say, should we?
Yeah, I'm sure this will be a quick stream tonight. It's always a quick stream.
Absolutely, we'll finish on time and under budget. I think is the
Sounds like a plan.
that's yeah.
All right, so let's look maybe first off just at some of the overall stats in low diamond and compare this with the last time we did things. We do have a budget. It's a nice round number. We did double the budget recently, but it didn't change. Okay, yeah. So here we have kind of the low diamond compared with what we're looking at in July. So the overall numbers maybe haven't changed that much, right? Very similar WOBA, ERA. Most of the stats
Yeah,
really are playing almost identically.
I
Maybe
think
one. Go ahead. Yeah.
given how likely it is that we're working with relatively small samples in both, I don't think there's a lot separating the two.
No, I think maybe one way to do it is there are a few more right-handers now being thrown, and I think we can see there's almost no difference in the pitching shape, but maybe there does seem to be a little bit more of a difference in the hitting. So a little bit less power, but for 5 more points of contact, 5 more points of gap. So the hitters probably have gotten better a little bit quicker than the pitchers in this format.
I would say that doesn't surprise me because there have been a lot more new hitters released that seemed relevant, but I haven't been paying attention because I don't play the format. So I'm just going to assume that that's the case, and I'll look very silly later as we start to reveal cards.
I think one other really big difference in the format from what we were talking about other levels, there are virtually no switch hitters available in this format. And that's going to be particularly a problem for roster construction because it's going to mean that you're going to have to play some players on the wrong side of their platoon or do some other things you don't really like in order to get a 14-man roster to cover all your positions. So that's something I think we'll come back to when we start to build rosters.
Yeah, but having to do that isn't like tragic or even particularly like new in the grand scheme of things. Right, we've just been fortunate in some of these other formats to have cards like Chipper Jones and
Yeah.
the like.
Yeah, Tattleton's a switch hitter. So I think there's some good switch hitters in a lot of the cheaper formats. And that just means that you have players that can play both ways. So it makes it easier to construct a roster. And here, if you just say, okay, it's 70% right-handed pitching, let's load up against righties, kind of the flip side of what I was suggesting you might do an iron last time around, you know, then you would end. What is this? I'll read the chat in a second. If you do that, then you are going to be stuck playing some splitty lefties against left-handed pitching 30% of the time, and you won't really have another option. Maybe that's a better way to think about it.
Sure. Yeah, you have to be more conscientious about things.
So, okay, so let's talk about some players,
This is not the format for Bob Bailey shaped bats.
or at least not more than one or two of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
What do we got? Catchers, the
Sure.
traditional.
We'll start with catchers. We think we got
I
that
swear,
figured out.
one of these days, you're going to swamp the slides around, and I'm just going to be caught out.
Well, no, we can do these in any order. If you want to jump to something else, we can jump to something else.
I think we're not that it matters because these will be recognizable as catchers, but I think the sheet is a little. It's moving off the top of the stream window a little bit.
Is it? Oh, it is. Let me think how to fix that without.
Like again, I think it's probably fine, but if it's not an easy fix anyway.
Doesn't look to
Format
be
for Brian Giles shaped bats.
doesn't look to be an easy enough fix. Yeah, so
right.
Brian Giles is a good example.
there you go.
We'll talk about where Giles is going to end up really only wanting to play one way, ideally.
Yep. It's my favorite two early game low diamond cards. Actually, I think genuinely an excellent example of this, where the other one is Rusty Staub, and he's less splitty and is more viable on the other side. Maybe you still don't want to, but if you're stuck playing one of them both ways.
Yeah, the one that I really liked was Bobby Higginson. I won one of those early and ended up using him in almost every format, but again, just kind of one way. So,
all right.
Yeah, so 6 righty bats and low diamond cap. Well, I guess it really depends what righty bats we're talking about. Because for caps, you're kind of getting away with anything on some level.
Yeah, caps are usually just like the best hitters available. You can only do so much.
So, all right, catchers. So, as usual, we'll start with the model. And the model's number one is still not listed as a catcher, but it's this Brian Downing card that just has been incredible. This was a PTCS 1 reward, right? And then now is more available.
Yep. This is continues to be your perfect catcher masquerading as a 93 outfielder. So not at all surprising to see him there. He'll probably be there for the rest of the game.
I think he'll be available. Yeah. The defense is certainly good enough and the bat's incredible. I guess I think about him sort of as the equivalent of King Kelly in League, where, Kelly isn't quite the defensive catcher you want, but you just get so much value with the bat for a guy that's eligible at catcher that you're going to end up running him anyway.
Yeah, sounds about right.
And I guess we have no data now on this newer release, Jerry Grote. And you were this is a card you were even playing in League, right? Because of the
I played him in League for a little bit because I have a very slappy ballpark, and he's a very slappy catcher that plays excellent defense. The shine wore off of that one pretty quickly, but I basically tried him as an upgrade over Severin, who is our number 3 man here, as the kind of defensive replacement catcher option, right? Like if you're going to have 2 catchers and they're both right-handed because none of the left-handed catchers are that compelling, you kind of either want the 2 best, like strictly best available in the game, or you want 2 that do very different things. So if King Kelly's going to play most of the games, having someone that you can like rely on to actually block sliders to put in there in the 9th inning of close games is is nice, even if it's a bit unrealistic, right? Like I don't
Yeah.
think you see that happening in real life baseball much. Uh,
So
but it turns out that like if anything, he's too slappy for perfect league. I think he's probably great in low diamond though.
I would love to see him in a dead ball format too. If there was some just kind
Oh
of a
yes,
dead ball era, but eligible more broadly. Then that shape is just great with the huge BABIP. I checked the pronunciation guide. It's Grody actually. So
yep,
now we know. Yeah, because basically he does exactly the two things you would want. He's got a 99 BABIP, not really splitty at all. 98 versus left, 100 versus right, so reverse split even. And then he's got 103 catcher ability. So this would be a great card for any kind of cap set in a dead ball format. I guess you're not going to get a lot out of the bat, but I'd still be interested to see what happens when we get a little bit more low diamond data on him. And I suspect we will get more data by the next time we do this.
yeah, you'd think so. The one issue, I don't know what his price is now, but it spiked pretty hard when the Cooperstown Club was released.
Yeah,
So
still 90K or
uh,
something, but that'll have to come down just as more of them come out of packs, right?
yeah, it's a question of how long it takes more than whether or not it'll happen.
Makes sense. All right.
So
So in the
we'll
data,
find
we have
out.
nothing from Grody. Severed, we also don't have great numbers for, actually. Although, in part, one of the things to keep in mind about low diamond, and someone pointed out that Brian Downing is winning over 1 out of every 7 tournaments. A lot of the numbers here, because it's so limited, come down to usage and come down to the cards that strong managers are running and know how to set their sliders and things like that are probably overperforming a little bit in the data as well.
Yeah, I expect to see a lot of that. Frankly, the people that are really into the format uh, in smaller formats tend to be overrepresented and tend to do really well. And low diamond, I think, is maybe even gold this year, but definitely low diamond. You're getting to a level where like really getting into the format becomes cost prohibitive for a lot of people. So, like the players with Brian Downing probably also have just about everyone else they could want.
I think so,
Um,
and you can win a lot of games. This bend trees build that we're going to show is winning at a 641 clip, which
Pretty
would
good.
just be insane at any kind of lower level in terms of the pack rate you're getting spamming quicks.
It's pretty good.
Um, Anyway, yeah. So for the data, so that's true. So they don't fill fast, and let's see. You have Downing on a couple of the theme teams. I could see that. So when Downing first came out, Warbot actually thought that he should simply be your open catcher and your league catcher as well.
He
So
was for me for some number of weeks there.
yeah, so maybe now he's been surpassed by a couple of cards, but I still think you could run Downing in league and do just fine.
Sure.
Especially if it's a more offensive park or something like that. All right, so what do we got in the data? Just for comparison, well, Downing's also winning in the data. And then we've got a couple guys with really limited sample size, and I think this is just sort of what we're going to be seeing, right? So Santop, for what it's worth, is also a really expensive card just because of the missions, right? If I
Yep.
remember
I
correctly.
think. I mean, a lot of the low diamond cards are just going to be expensive for that reason. Um, like if they're
Yeah.
in missions and also playable, it's just sort of like the worst case scenario for their pricing. Um,
Yeah, but I think also,
Stantop
yeah,
notable here for being a left-handed catcher that's like acceptable.
that's true. I'm sure he throws righty because everybody throws
Probably.
righty, but yeah. That's definitely a big help. I also think what you're seeing here, yeah. So as EVC suggests, Lopez really shouldn't be hitting, and the bat's probably comparable to Santop. Neither of them should be hitting at like a 330 woba, and I think this is just a reflection of the sample size. I suspect they would drop off a fair bit over time. I mean, maybe another way to say it is if you compare Lopez's bat to Severid above, they're really similar bats, right? So Lopez has a little bit more power, 19 more points of power, but neither has power that actually plays. And in return, Severid has some more gap power, right?
Mhm.
There should
Yep.
not there should not be a 40-point difference in WOBA between those bats. And so I think probably both Santop and Lopez, and we're going to see this with a lot of the data here. I think this is a small sample size thing, and I'd have a hard time wanting to play those cards over Grody or Severid or one of the catchers that has a similarly weak bat, but is just much better behind the plate.
Do that.
All right, so let's see. If you're going to run a platoon, well, Warbot just says Downing is so much better than everything else. Just run Downing. And I think it's really hard to disagree, right? You just get a competent catcher with a real bat.
Again, you could play this card certainly in Diamond League, maybe in Perfect League still, and be kind of fine, right? Like that's how good this card is. So unsurprising that Warbot recognizes that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like just run the severely misrated card.
Pretty much. Let's see. The biggest winner, well, just because there aren't a lot of copies of Downing out there, it's still not Downing. So Del Crandall is actually on the most winning rosters, and that's presumably mainly availability. But I think it's also pointing out that Crandall is still a pretty good card, right? If you compare Crandall, again, maybe that's another one. Hold Crandall just directly up against, say, Al Lopez.
Sure. I mean, there are a lot of
Crandall should just be a little better.
There are a lot of kind of samey low diamond catchers that are all kind of like, very good defensively, but not elite, that have like kind of decent bats, but not like elite. Or Brian Downing has an absurd bat for the format, and then like Grody and Severit are elite gloves. And then you have like Lopez and Crandall, and I think there are another 2 or 3 guys that are kind of in that category. But Del Crandall is, I think, one of the live rewards. So
I should also mention here
that represented
that there are actually 2 Del Crandalls that do have very similar ratings, but the 91 packable Del Crandall is just very slightly better across the board than the 93 mission reward. So that's another one to keep in mind.
Go.
Let's see, a few other options. So Warbot has the Crandalls 4th and 5th, and then likes Muddy Ruel next, the low gold with just the insane defense and also just a great bat for what he's got. Then Santop, Terry Kennedy, Al Lopez. So pretty much the usual suspects. All right. On a budget, well, everything with a budget's going to be tough this week. That's just the nature of playing low diamond. Is it's going to cost some points to get into this format, right?
Yeah, I mean that's perpetually the problem, right?
But I think if you want to ask who's cheapest, well, probably the answer is actually just go with the Del Crandall you're getting from a mission. If you want to go with a packable, we could point to the Severid. Maybe should be kind of thrown up here as being cheap. But the truth is, if you're really on a budget, we'll just put Del Crandall up here because It's a mission card. You can get him cheaply, and he is still basically as good as anybody other than Downing in this format, or at least close enough. So that's not one to spend on unless you're going to spend on Downing, I would think. So with that in mind, what are we running? Well, I'm running Downing, and I'm just running Downing both ways and not thinking about it. And it looks like that's what Bend is doing also.
If I were Ben Trees, I would be running Brian Downing. Great. I don't have anything
Yeah,
to make up
we'll let you
here.
defend the Ben Trees decision here.
I'm running the best card in the format.
Yeah, I think it really
I
is
don't know.
that simple.
Seems easy enough.
And I am now running Grody as the backup, but I think I could run any of a few backups and be pretty happy.
Sure.
All right. Should we go to first base where it's a little less clear cut?
Yeah, let's go to first base.
Okay. No Walker Cooper. Cooper. Let me see where Warbot would put Cooper. I think the glove is going to be a real problem, though. Because Cooper, I would think Cooper is essentially a DH, right?
Let me see here.
Yeah, so 71 catcher ability is going to put you way behind all of these other options defensively.
Also worth pointing out that since the great eye update, probably Warbot has fallen out of love with Walker Cooper as well.
That's true. No, but generally Cooper. I think if you're running Walker Cooper, you probably are running him more as a DH. You're getting 97 power, so that is certainly worth something as a bat. Mm-hmm. But I think if you had the choice between Cooper and, say, Downing, it's not really close. And the crazy thing is, you currently can get Downing at the same price you can get Walker Cooper.
Yeah, I mean, they're both tournament rewards, right?
Yeah. But they're being valued by the market as equal, which really is surprising to me because it feels like Downing should just be the much better card.
Yeah. I mean, best I can figure, there isn't a lot of demand for Downing as a league catcher anymore because King Kelly is relatively achievable for a lot of people. And not a ton of people are into low diamond as a format. So, yeah, I think there are also more, like by some distance, probably more Brian Downings available.
Yeah, I guess it must be an availability thing because
right. I think there were normally 16 of them from the first PTCS.
That's true. And is Walker Cooper now out of print as well? I'm trying to remember.
I couldn't tell you.
I think he might be at least. Let's see. Stanley ends up around 20th. Oh, okay. He has a new one? Yeah, I think it's funny because usually I find that the market's pretty efficient in terms of, you can decide whether someone's overpriced or whether you want to wait, but generally the cards that are going for a lot of points are usually cards that a lot of people are interested in running.
That sounds often correct, at least.
Yeah, and so I'm just surprised with Walker Cooper. So, okay, looking at the numbers, Warbot does think Walker Cooper should have the highest OPS and the second highest WOBA among catchers, or at least catcher-eligible cards. A little bit ahead of Downing in OPS, a little bit behind Downing in WOBA. But then there's this enormous defensive gap where Downing really is someone you're happy to put behind the plate, and Walker Cooper isn't. And I think that's the big gap. And that's where I would have thought that you're looking at Cooper as closer to a DH, except once you're looking at a right-handed DH, as we're going to see later on, there are just so many other bats in the format that it's hard to make that work.
Yeah.
But I'd be interested to see if there. Let me see if we have any data. Give me a second. I'll see if we have any data here on Cooper. That's a good question. Okay, only 500 plate appearances, so not enough to really say too much.
Not at
He
all.
is at .3 WAR, so in the limited data, he'd be a little bit behind. He'd be right behind Al Lopez. He'd be fourth in the data, but that's a really limited sample. Yeah, I guess it just depends on how much offense you want from the catcher position and how much you're willing to trade off the catcher ability. So
Sorry, I haven't slept enough recently, so I've just caught myself like nodding in agreement here silently, as though that matters to anybody.
fair
Like
enough.
there aren't any visuals. This isn't doing anything.
Makes sense. All right. Well, let's talk first base then. So, all right. So
Terry Turner.
first base, few more options. So not a lot of data on the ones the model ends up liking best. So Warbot likes Prince Fielder at the top. Maybe a bit of a platoon bat, but just like when we were talking about Kruk in silver, such a good platoon bat that you just run him anyway.
Yeah,
And
shoot
then
matches.
and then no data on Bagwell and Allison as a couple right-handed options.
Yeah, and I think that's probably pretty typical for most formats where you can't get ideal matchups everywhere, right? You wind up um, really like using your big platoon options at your high leverage offensive positions. So like usually first base and DH, and maybe a corner outfielder if things line up just that way. But
Yeah.
uh, yeah, not surprising to see that at all.
Let's see. Oh, yeah, yes. So it is true that Prince Fielder only has a 76 I, but there are other ways to get on base as well. You know, the reason Warbot likes I so much is basically because it's a way that you can get on base which doesn't degrade as much when you go against higher end pitching and higher end defenses. But if you do enough other things to get on base, you can get away with a little bit lower I, right? I mean, Prince Fielder just hits home runs, right? That'll get you on base as well. That
The
96
old bat,
contact is also really good by comparison.
the old Babhop theory, right? Like
Yeah.
you have three sources of on base percentage. You have walks, you have BABIP, and you have BABOP.
Yes.
And it turns out that like if you hit a ball over the center field fence, you get to touch all of the bases.
Yep. That's true.
I think you can even dwell on one of them for a time if you don't mind getting thrown at the next time you're at bat.
Yeah. Although the leagues I play in, they wouldn't throw at you; they would throw at the next guy. So it's really your teammate that takes the
Oh,
brunt of it, right?
oh, even better.
Um,
I mean, no, I mean, of course you don't leave your teammate out to dry like that. That would be a terrible. Um,
yes.
yeah,
No, of course not. I mean that. Yeah. Yeah. Of course not. Okay. Right. Uh, what are we going to do next year when shifts are banned? I don't know, but I like the extreme overshifts that we see in OOTP now. You know, if you actually look at the highlights. So
yeah, they're significant. I do wonder a little bit if Major League Baseball is going to just get a little bit more creative with the use of outfielders and shifting as kind of the response to this, right? Like I've seen uh,
Yeah,
basically some theories on like, okay, well, if you put your third baseman on the very back of the dirt, that's almost as good as playing a really shallow left fielder against extreme pull hitters. So what if we just move the left fielder to play like, in between that like
I mean,
no man's zone between the second baseman and the right fielder.
I still think that the solution to this has to be on the hitter end. You know,
Just like
let the fielders
learn to
field
bunt.
wherever they want to, and it's the hitter's job to hit the ball where they ain't, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean like in principle I think that's probably correct, but I get the idea of wanting to administratively sort of fix the problem with problem is a strong word, but um, pitching tends to gain a lot more from the technology and data analysis than hitting does, right? So there's no like lowering the mound equivalent to the knowledge gap and how meaningful that is.
Well, but there is a solution, which is you learn to hit the ball the other way.
Yeah,
I think
I,
that's
I think
one. I think another is
sure.
there are fun things you can do with runners on base. You know,
Well, I think this is less about trying to like save careers of people like Chris Davis, and more about trying to cut down on the number of like absolute lasers hit to short right field that are caught that fans are like, this sucks. That should have been a hit, right? Like a lot of people that watch baseball casually just want to see action, and that's not action. I'm not
yeah.
saying that's correct, but I think that's the rationale.
I mean, and maybe it's also just that I've played a fair bit of cricket, which is a great game in terms of like really getting to think your way through it and the tactics mattering. And there's a
Oh
lot
man,
there of just, you put the fielders
how
in ways that, don't let you hit the
so?
ball in some spots and you have to adjust as the hitter.
I assume you played, and I could be wrong, but I assume you played a good deal of baseball before you learned to play cricket.
I
Is
did.
that
I played
how
baseball
long?
and I blew out my shoulder and if you can't pitch anymore, you can still bowl in cricket because it's an easier motion on the shoulder.
Sure. Um, how long did it take you to adjust to swinging the cricket bat?
I'm still not convinced I've adjusted to swinging it.
Yeah, it's
Everything.
so different.
What I ended up doing for a while was just batting left-handed in cricket and right-handed in baseball because I couldn't keep them both at the same time.
Oh, that makes some sense. I feel like a lot of the time in cricket, you're not like swinging as much as you are like parrying the ball almost.
Well, it's a different motion, but I mean that's the thing is that cricket looks so similar to baseball, but everything technically feels backward. And I think the
Yeah,
toughest is actually fielding.
Mr. Black, that's absolutely correct. But if nobody tells you that, and you go up with the bat for the first time, bad things happen.
Well, also in cricket, you're basically swinging with your top hand instead of your bottom hand. That's the biggest. There are all these little technical differences, but I think fielding was the biggest one because in baseball, anytime you get the ball, you're almost immediately going to throw it. So, like as an infielder, if the ball's hit to you, right, you go down to the ball. But in cricket, you almost start down and come up to the ball. There's just little things like that. Anyway, we should talk about first
Anyway,
baseman
look out!
probably.
Look out for Out of the Park Cricket 2024. Perfect team for that is going to be a lot simpler. and we're gonna love it.
Let's see. I see. I see. So your argument is that basically the better solution for hitting the ball through the shift is to hit it over the shift instead of kind of hit it the other way. Is that the argument they were making?
I mean, that's an option, right? Like that is kind of the other thing that they're trying to cut down on, right? Like it's easier for extreme pull hitters to work on increasing launch angle and just like always swing for the fences than it is to learn to hit the other way competently. So they're sort of incentivized to do that, which uh, is less compelling baseball.
I guess. Yeah.
You know, or we could just get more players like Julio Rodriguez that can hit a ball like over 400 feet at a 17-degree launch angle. Holy.
If I could do that, then yeah, that's true. If I were capable of doing that, I would just try to hit it over the shift.
Just like a casual line drive that clears the wall and it's not close.
So, yeah.
That guy's very good at baseball, and I'm excited to watch him play for some time. May he not get injured. Knock on
Yeah.
wood.
Right. So much for short stream today. Okay. Right. First base. What do we got?
See, that's
for
what
the
happens
observed
when there
data?
isn't a guest to keep us on track. We'll just ramble.
We just need chat to keep us on track, clearly. All right, what do we got in the observed data? So again, some really limited
What is he?
samples. So Mickey Vernon, I'm almost certain that's going
Oh
to
yeah.
be Mickey Vernon as a platoon bat, where he's great.
Yes.
You,
Yep.
you really can't run him both ways.
Again, you sort of expect to see that at first base, right? So like same with Prince Fielder, same with Jimmy. Like Jimmy Fox and Prince Fielder maybe are a little better both ways than Mickey Vernon is, but they're still fairly splitty.
To be fair, we're not really blaming chat for the long stream. I think we'd somehow manage a long one anyway, and we definitely enjoy the long stream. But
Oh, for sure. Like this is like hangout time with chat, which is we know way more about than Low Diamond. So really we're just like leaning into our core competencies here.
pretty much, yeah. Let's see. So, and Fielder and Fox really would be a natural platoon too. And it's nice to see
Yep.
Fox up there as someone that's really easy to get. You know,
Yeah.
kind of the card everyone's had since the beginning of the game. And he even does hit righties a little bit.
Yep. He still plays, and again, as I mentioned, what like 6 hours ago now, near when the stream started. Stanton is basically right field Jimmy Fox, so it's kind of fun that they're like joint most frequently on winning teams.
Yeah. Let's see. If you're going to run a platoon, so Warbot, of course, likes Fielder the one way, likes Bagwell slightly better than Allison, but Allison's a really good two-way player as well. And I think that's a card I was really excited to pick up a copy of, and I'm now running him almost everywhere. So let's
Yeah,
see.
I haven't really played tournaments in a couple months, so I can't comment on that. No,
Fair enough.
I guess I owe chat like 20 seconds of explanation there. I basically burned myself out trying to compete at tournaments and also compete at league play. So to sort of let myself keep playing the game and remaining like happy and enjoying it, I decided I would only do one at a time. So as soon as someone does me the favor of sending me back down to Diamond, finally, I get to play tournaments again, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think I'm also. It is tough to do more than one at a time, especially
Yeah,
because I don't have the card base that you do. So trying to hang on in Perfect League takes more micro and more effort, maybe.
yeah, but but like it works the same way, right? Like I have been investing very heavily in cards for my perfect team and not for my tournament teams. So like those are pretty significantly behind in terms of tournament pieces.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um,
Um,
let's see.
I think I
If we
probably
go,
should pick
sorry, go
one
ahead.
of. I should pick one of these formats and just like run quicks on the regular though. Right, that's pretty low maintenance.
Low diamond. Uh,
Ooh, so
so
close.
so let's see. Actually, maybe that is a good question. If you have a lot of cards and are just looking for kind of the best combination of running as often as possible, but also having a big edge, what do you think is the
Probably
sweet spot
silver.
right now?
It's probably silver. It's always silver. Um, that being said, uh, I think every time you look at the iron results, the teams that win the most iron tournaments tend to be teams that you would expect to do well in we'll say upper price bracket tournaments.
Yeah,
So maybe there's something to be said for diving back into the people's format too.
I could see that. Let's see. Yeah, if you would go past these three, by the way, number four we have the special edition Pujols, then the new Negro League Ben Taylor, then Fred McGriff, which really is a platoon bat, but a great platoon bat. I think in gold we have him as the
Yeah,
top, kind of as the top one-way option. Edgar Wesley, Pedro Guerrero, and then Fox, and of course John Morrill is going to be up there because, you know, Warbot's always going to like John Morrill.
yeah. For reasons.
So yeah, that's true. So if they had a low gold, if there were a low gold quick that ran a lot, that would almost be perfect for, having the key
Yeah, that's true.
expensive cards because there are a bunch of 82s and 83s.
Does silver fire off as often as iron? No, but if you do well at it, at least this was the case a couple months ago. If you do fairly well at it, you usually can queue for one as a team, like as you lose one. So it absolutely doesn't fire off as often as iron, but it fires off often enough that you can chain them.
So yeah, I think so. I'm just thinking this Ben Taylor maybe is worth mentioning. The card essentially has everything but power, right?
Yes, Ben Taylor was a card that I got very excited about when it was released, and it's not especially great in this format, but it's the shape of card that I like this year. Dang it!
Makes sense. Let's see. All right. Biggest winner. Well, I think the biggest winner just is still going to be Jimmy Fox. Almost everyone is
Yep.
still running him somewhere. Uh, and for that matter, if you're going to have a budget pick, Jimmy
Yeah, I
Fox.
mean, almost everyone has him, right? Like
Yeah.
it's another one of those live tournament rewards that's had just incredible legs,
Right.
which is live tournament rewards, live collection rewards rather,
Yeah.
which is really great to see, right? Like some number of those live collection rewards were sort of unplayable filler, but there were a good number of them that have played in their respective formats. Like, what are we now? 5 months in?
Yeah, and there are a bunch also that just sort of fit builds. I actually think this is where the new Negro League cards are going to start to crowd things out the most. Is that's the first set of cards that are both solid at kind of the silver through diamond level, but then also play a bunch of positions so they help with roster construction. Because a card like Don Money just fit everywhere for a while.
I mean,
Because
still
they're
kind of does as a backup for
Well,
everything in a
he
lot of
still kind of
formats.
does, but now there are finally a couple of other options that just came in the game that also play
Sure,
like
that's
five
true.
positions and maybe hit slightly better. So
That's true. Maybe I'll get back into silver this week. We can run a silver stream in a couple weeks after our mystery bonus stream next week.
Yes. So Staub doesn't end up, at least in the top 20, both ways. But if you give me a second, I'll just run it VR, because I bet VR he's going to be a fair bit higher.
I still every time hear like Jonathan VR, and my brain takes a moment to parse it properly.
Um, so
Uh,
Staub,
ba- ba-
go ahead.
Bailey, let me answer this real quick while Charles is looking that up. Um, the idea is that you probably have more of an ability to differentiate your team from the average team based on cards that you own than anyone in Iron does. And it still runs frequently enough that you're not wasting a lot of time sitting around waiting. Does that make sense? Like, if you get up at the beginning of the day, it may take you an hour before you have all three in and running. But assuming your team is good enough to win in the first round with some regularity, generally you won't run into too many situations where like you're out of everything and waiting for silver tournaments to fire. So I do think Iron Best of Five is maybe the fun answer there, but that's the theory behind running silver for profit.
Well, I think the difference is also, I mean, as an example, at low diamond, the build that we're showing from Ben Trees is winning over 64% of their games. And I guess I
Which is
don't know what the
ridiculous,
numbers
by the
are
way.
in Iron right now, but I would be shocked if in the long term anybody's winning more than about 55%, just because everyone has the availability to grab the same cards. And
I,
usually when teams start winning a lot, people copy the build, or at least copy enough
sure.
pieces of it that you lose the edge.
Yeah, it's like, I want to say that there are some meaningful sliders this year. So especially if you're building teams that lean into that in Iron, you might be able to get close to 60% long term. But like, yeah, the upper limit is a lot lower than it is for the higher cost formats for sure.
Right. So that's the trade-off. I think if I could get to 60% in Iron, I should just spam Iron because it runs so frequently. But I think 60% would be really tough to attain in the long run.
Well, so, yes and no. I think maybe the key factor there is that Iron changes a lot faster than some of these other formats as well, right? Like the metagame is a little bit more fluid because you everyone has all the cards.
Yeah.
So I think kind of what Adesep said there, right? Like
Yeah, well, because what happens is
you can often,
when your build
yeah,
works, people copy pieces of your build, and
yeah,
if your build is in low diamond and it's based on Downing and Prince Fielder and possibly
yeah. That's a
eventually
lot
tonight
harder
we'll
to
get to some of
copy.
the other options, you know, it's expensive for people to copy. So
Yep. So I think you could probably sustain 60% in Iron if you're willing to change your build every 3 days. Um, which is asking a lot for a lot of people. So uh, yeah, maybe just run silver or gold or low diamond.
sounds about right. Um, oh, that's right. I was looking up Rusty Staub. That's what I was trying to do. Ends up a little better even as a right fielder, I think. I'm just trying to find the, but a fair bit behind. Yeah, but a fair bit behind the others. So I don't think Rusty is really playable given the new stuff that's come out. Would be my guess.
He was playable at first base for a long time though.
Definitely was, yeah. Um, the problem is that Prince Fielder kind of kills him at first, and even Giles probably is going to be a better option in right. So I think if you have all the cards, it becomes tough. But if you don't have all the cards, then it's still worth thinking about. Anyway,
Yeah,
right.
that tracks.
We should probably go on. We're getting a slow stream going tonight, aren't we?
Chat, stop doing this. We have no self control. We are
All right.
incapable of not engaging
All
in
right. So, so,
tangents.
so what are we actually running? So I'm running basically a slightly weaker version of Ben Taylor in Ferris Fane. Really, really similar shape to Taylor. Uh, the two cards are actually almost identical, except that Taylor is just a point or two ahead on a lot of things. So, I think if I had both Taylor and Fane, there's
Say
no circumstance in
presumably,
which I could run Ferris Fane because Taylor just is slightly dominant over, just slightly better across the board.
presumably Ferris Fane is more affordable, or maybe you just opened one, I guess.
I think the real answer is I opened one. I think Ferris Fane is also more affordable, but I guess given that the Platinum 2 missions are going to drop, I think if you want to get yourself a Ferris Fane, I'd probably
It
get
may
one
already be
now
too
instead
late.
of 4 hours from now. If I had to guess, I guess it depends how hard the missions are, right?
Always does,
So
and what the rewards are, frankly, right? Like
that's true. Well, I
we
guess
don't
there's going
know
to
what to
be. I
expect
think there's going to be
or
one big
how.
topper, is what they've said, right? So it'll be
Yeah,
like
I
the
mean,
equivalent. Yeah.
let's say if it's like Plat One, we'll get some challenging missions with some Mopey packs as rewards, and then like some top tier perfect card as the overall topper.
Yeah,
Um,
I think I would love. Well, I was going to say what I would love to see as a corner outfielder, but I'm hoping from the way this is announced that we're going to get a real high end Clemente tonight from the packable stuff.
yeah, because I have to indulge in this. I was talking about this with Kidneys the other night, and we decided that like the two options that we'd be interested in. One of them would be like a Pete Clemente to kind of tie the Clemente Day and tie the two things together.
Yeah.
And I think the other one that I really wanted to see because they did a pitcher last time, we were thinking they should do a fielder this time, um, and I wanted a really good right-handed defensive second baseman. So I landed on Bobby Grick. I think he'd be fun.
You could do a Pete Carew, right? He got a Clemente award. Um,
Sure, but again, I wouldn't expect to. I would expect that to see that as part of the Clemente stuff, and not necessarily as the topper for the
you're thinking of the overall.
specifically for the topper for the platinum thing. Yeah,
I would like to see a really good top tier right handed pitcher added. Like a Peak Maddox or something.
trying to think. We could talk about this forever.
All
I'll
right,
let's
sure.
go on to second
Second
base,
base.
and
Let's do
I'll
second
I'll have
base.
it going in the background, and maybe I'll come up with an interesting suggestion as we go.
All right, that sounds good. So second base. We'll go to the model first as usual, and we've got a new winner. We've got George Scales.
Hey,
So we have. Hold on. That I'm just making sure that's yeah. So Scales, also listed as the shortstop, but certainly plays second. This is just an enormous bat, right? I mean, there's
yeah,
no other way to say it. That's just an enormous bat for a second baseman. I think one of the things that's been kind of weird with the second baseman so far, I think you pointed this out in a previous stream, is that just universally there seems to be very little range
it's true.
at second.
Yep.
And Scales fits that trend. He's only got 79 range. So the bat is enormous, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about him at shortstop again. But the
Probably
79
calling
range is
out
a
that
problem.
well, it is and it isn't, right? Like Jackie Robinson plays in perfect league, and he's got 84 range at second base, right? So if the bat's good enough, 79 range for low diamond seems fine, right? Like he's never going to be a good defensive second baseman, but maybe you don't need him to be, right? Like maybe he gets to about average, and that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. And and I think right behind him, and Hera, for what it's worth, has similar issues, right? Hera, again, you're getting the bat, but not the glove. You're only getting 72 range out of Hera.
Mm-hmm.
So McAuliffe, on the other hand, this was one of my favorite cards when it came out. And so Scales is eligible at all four infield positions. McAuliffe second, third, and short. And you get 87 range from him. With, probably a platoon bat, you'd really like to only run him against righties if you could. But this is an excellent
I,
card.
I love that card. I have enjoyed Dick McAuliffe the last couple years in the situations where he's been relevant. Just a fun card.
Yeah, it's a great card, and so I'm running McAuliffe in all sorts of builds at this point. Again, just for the flexibility, and you know, maybe Scales, maybe Scales replaces him. I guess it depends how much better the bat is, and we don't have any data. But you can see McAuliffe is putting up this enormous zero point 0.7 WAR already per. I mean, per 100 plate appearances, right? He's getting you like 3/4 of a win per tournament for running McAuliffe. If Scales is better, then then that will be impressive. But I'm still a big fan of McAuliffe. And what do we got in the observed? Well, so the observed McAuliffe, and then we've got Collins and Pfeffer. So Hera just doesn't have enough appearances at second in the observed data, or he would be second on this list.
Wait, Fred Pfeffer, just holding on.
He is, yeah. And this Collins is kind of an interesting card, right? More of a dead ball type shape, no power. And again, a lot of this comes down to defensive value, right?
Sure.
Hub Collins, 73 range, which isn't bad considering the low, uh, you know, no arm, not great at turning double plays. So if you're going to have a, card that's weaker there, maybe that's okay. But Pfeffer only has 77 range. What he's got is this 101 turn double plays. So
And
I think
also, he mashes.
he does.
He's got that bab up.
He's got the Baba. Yes. Um, let's see. And then if you're going to run a platoon, as I mentioned, McAuliffe's really a platoon guy. So this is where Warbot just thinks you can run Hera the other way. And interestingly enough, Scales doesn't end up best on either side of the platoon, but he ends up best overall, just because the splits are smaller. So that's another good one to think about for roster construction. George Scales has essentially zero split. 2 points of I, 1 point of power, 1 point of BABIP, 1 point of avoid K. So scales you don't have to platoon, and the others you'd probably think more about.
Important to know.
Let's see. All right, biggest winner. Well, actually, the biggest winner is still Pfeffer. I think just again, a lot of it's availability. You can see we've got more plate appearances on him than basically anybody. It's still a good card.
Yeah, probably as high as he is just because he's been around since forever.
Yeah, well, you can see that the teams that have most of the cards in the game are running. McAuliffe's winning over one out of every 6 tournaments. So that's not just
EBC,
due to McAuliffe and his big war. That's because he's running in the builds with the teams that have every card.
Sure. EVC, don't feel bad sticking with Terry Turner. Terry Turner is fabulous. Where does Terry Turner show up Does like is that card included in Warbot's second baseman considerations?
He's included in the considerations, but probably the defense at second is going to take a bit of a penalty, right?
I think his issue's probably more than that. Like, I want to say he plays reasonable
Let me see.
defense at second
No,
base.
you're
Like,
no,
I
you're
wouldn't want to
right.
play
No,
him
you're
as
right.
short.
No, he's in the second thing. So he's in the top 15 at short, but not at second, just because of the bat.
Oh, interesting.
Because the
Okay,
one thing he's good at is avoiding Ks, and Warbot kind of likes Ks.
sure, that's true.
Uh, let's see. Couple other options we could
That
mention here.
that has always been one of Warbot's failings.
Um, the gold Ryan Sandberg, gold Joe Morgan's playable. The gold Evers is playable here. Uh, the new Tony Lazzeri is playable. There are some Jeff Kents that are playable. Hey, George Grantham ends up in the top 15 in Warbot even at this point.
Yo,
Uh,
our
all
boy
right.
George.
So again, it's really tough to find a true budget option. But we did have a good suggestion here. If you pick him up before the missions drop, would be to take a look at the gold Johnny Evers. So you're not getting something that's too far behind some of these expensive diamond options at this point. But this is a card that still is going in the 4 digits instead of the mid 5 digits. You get 80 range at second base, which is more than the cards that we've been talking about. You know, you don't get any power, but you know, if he had power, he would be a high diamond, right? And you're still getting a
So
lefty bat, you know, in a meta that's mostly righties. You know, in any
I
event,
do,
yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
I'd say I do still love me that bad shape.
Yeah, obviously he's going to be better if you can play him in gold than in low diamond, but
Sure.
all right. So what are we actually running here? Um,
I don't know. What are we running here?
that's true. You don't know because what you're really telling me about is what Dend is running.
It's more fun this way. Well, I'll find out.
All
Well,
right.
I'll find out
So
together.
I really do like second base defense, and so I'm running McAuliffe, and the other way I'm actually running Granny Hamner, just because I want the glove.
Sure, I respect that. Uh,
Um,
looks like I'm running Toby Hara because I want to flaunt my wealth.
Yep. Well,
No,
hold
I
on.
mean, like,
No, wait. But
I don't think Warbot.
there were just another 64 Toby Harris dropped into the world, right?
I can't promise that. I don't know how. You would expect that most people would have taken Toby Hara. Probably some number didn't, because that's just how this works.
Yeah. Yeah. So Tankylosaur, I for what it's worth, I'm actually running Tinker and Evers right now in my league team, although I couldn't manage a chance. There is a Was there a limited edition chance or something that came out? I'm trying to remember.
Last year there was.
Was it last year? We haven't seen a chance this year, right?
Yeah, we have not seen Frank Chance this year.
Okay.
Last year he was. I don't think he was a limited edition. I think he was like a relatively late game packable
Okay.
that just like didn't quite play on arrival.
All right. So we got
Right? Like,
so we've got no chance, but we've got the rest. Oh, it was just a perfect packable. Okay.
yeah,
Hera's great, and I am running Hera. I'm just not running him at second,
not here. Sure.
but I am actually running him in my low diamond build. And you can see there's basically no data on Hamner, but I just think given kind of how difficult it is to find anybody that can somewhat hit and play defense at second base. I mean, when you're getting 102 range, the hope is that that ends up being worth it. So, all right, should we go on? Somehow we're behind schedule. I know.
What do you mean? We're exactly on schedule. This stream arrives precisely when it means to.
Is Jeff Kent not good? So we've got Jeff Kent like about 10th, about 18th. I think there's some more Jeff Kents I could find. The Platinum 1 Jeff Kent ends up 10th from Warbot. Although the Kent actually that I really like, the Gold Kent. Sorry, I shouldn't say the gold. Is there only the one Gold Kent? Yeah, the 85 overall Kent with the slight reverse splits, I think, is the strongest. So, all right, third base.
It's
You were supposed to say I don't know, and then oh well.
you went too fast.
All right. So model at third base here, and again, we've got a couple new cards to look at. So finally got someone to top Eddie Matthews in this new Bregman, and then Darrell Evans. On the other hand, Matthews as a platoon bat is still incredible. Bregman is winning over 20% of the tournaments he plays in this really limited sample.
It seems nuts.
Yeah. I mean, well, you're getting solid defense, but then you're just getting so much more of a bat, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, unironically, card seems nuts.
So I think that's a card, that I now regret. When I did these Cooperstown Club missions, that was one of the cards I skipped, just trying to complete them as cheaply as possible. And I think now looking at this, I regret that because I'm going to feel like I have to pick up a copy anyway for a bunch of builds.
Sure. Never a great feeling. However, that does mean that you can sell them on eventually if you decide to go a different direction.
That's true. Except by the time you decide to go a different direction, you lose the value. And yeah. Anyway, right. The data. So we still have Toby Hara up there, and this Wade Boggs. Now, I've been kind of puzzled by this. I don't know if it's a small sample size thing. I mean, 1,134 plate appearances is larger than some of the other samples. I do know I had a conversation with Kidneys this week where he was trying to convince me that Boggs had a great bat shape, both the gold and the perfect, I think. So
yeah, I've had that conversation with him also.
I still don't believe it, and the defense still scares me. I don't want to run Eddie Matthews defensively at third, and Boggs is going to be a similar problem. And also, really, when I look at the Denny Lyons below him, and I have trouble understanding why Boggs is 26 more points of WOBA.
It's got to be small sample size, right?
I feel like it's got to be, but at the same time, he's putting up numbers. So, all right, if you're going to run a platoon, what do we want to do here? Well, then Evans and Bregman are fine. And Evans in particular, you get a lot. Bregman, you get a fair bit of power, but you get a lot out of Darrell Evans if you're going to run him against righties. And still with legitimate defense. In fact, I think that 1 out of every 15 wins has got to be really up there for a packable. Obviously, Bregman's higher because he's new, but I mean for a packable that kind of most people are have available.
Yeah, I remember running that card in perfectly well. I guess it would have been in like gold or something at the time, and so desperately wanting to replace it and just not being able to. Right, because he'll hit 220 and a million home runs, and he'll have an on base percentage, somewhere around 360. Like he's good, just a good card.
Yeah. So I think Bregman is better to run both ways if you have to run someone both ways, but it is 70% right hand pitching, so maybe it's still right to run someone like Evans and just hope it works. Let's see. Biggest winner, I guess, is going to be none of these, right? Because we don't have a lot of data. I don't know who the biggest. All right, biggest winner is. Let's find out. Oh, it's the Wade. It's. Oh, that's interesting. It's the. I forgot that. Okay, so the low diamond Wade Boggs is the biggest winner, but the gold Wade Boggs is actually second in the observed data.
I got nothing.
And the
I'm
gold
not
Wade
going to try to
Boggs is
explain
hitting
that.
for over 50 points of WOBA less than. All right, I think the gold Wade Boggs has just got to be a sample size thing, right?
It has to be.
I mean, we mentioned this at the top that this is one where, there are some formats, like when we were looking at bronze, there's just so much data out there that ultimately when the data and the model disagree, you probably tend to trust the data over the model. Here, maybe you do want to trust the model a little bit more when there's some disagreement just because of the small sample size.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe you do.
Let's see. Other options here after Hera, by the way. Let's see. So George Scales actually comes in fourth here. That's another option versus lefties. Hera, McGraw. Denny Lyons, I think, is probably the next right-handed hitter I'd look at. Yeah, you're asking kind of an alternative versus left. Denny Lyons would be a pretty good option as a righty. Also, you could just go with Doug DeCinces, Billy Werber. You could probably run Vern Stevens, although if you kind of have the budget where you're running Vern Stevens, then you might also have a Bregman, I guess.
You might. Right.
Pedro Guerrero is also playable here, but again, I feel like the builds that have Guerrero and Stevens probably are looking at a different level of third baseman. So, yeah, Diamond Boggs has better D, but also should be just a better bat. Like that should just be a significantly better card, I would have thought. Maybe if you're running Boggs both ways, maybe the gold Boggs does a little better behind the plate, but yeah, I think that's got to be a sample size thing. All right, so how about a cheap third baseman? A few of these that we were talking about are still expensive, but just to highlight another card, maybe we'll point out this John McGraw. Packable and still fairly cheap. And I mean,
Sorry,
come on.
I had a contractual obligation.
Yeah. Yeah? Go ahead.
No. I snuck it in there. John
you
McGraw!
I mean, look, it's a Warbot stream, so we just had to point out that there is actually a card out there with an enormous amount of I at third base that you can play. The defense is awful, but he gets on base a lot, and maybe there are even eras that you can run him in where he'd be a bit better. Like as a dead ball card, the lack of defense hurts you a little bit more, but the BABIP helps you a lot more, and the eye certainly does.
I think John McGraw is the sort of card that you run not because it's good, but because it's fun.
So definitely, I'm gonna when I kind of find some time, I'm gonna get an alt and make just a Warbot, max eye and forget everything else kind of build, and just run it in caps and see if people need 15 pitchers against it. And John McGraw is exactly going to be in that build.
Oh, for sure.
But really, it was just we had to find a way to highlight it, the card with all the eye in a Warbot stream, right?
I suppose.
I wish he had a better glove.
Yeah, well, so did he.
All right. So what are we actually running here? So I am actually running gold both ways. So I'm running Eddie Matthews one way because he just gives you so incredibly much versus righties that I'm willing in this format to just run him as a platoon guy and just never let him face a lefty. And then I'm running Toby Hara the other way because he gets on base. I'm pretty
Over
simple
here,
that
we're
way
running Alex Bregman because Alex Bregman.
because Alex Bregman is simply winning over
Remind me,
20% of his
remind me to
tournaments.
think, remind me to thank Adam Payette for like having no players on his team that need any defending.
Yeah,
It just makes my job as a stand-in so much easier. It's just like
yeah.
just play the best card.
Just run the best cards and don't worry about all the all the like weird build and stuff. Where does Joe Creedy
Choices,
rank?
don't make choices. Just play the good ones.
I don't have much data on Joe Creedy, and Warbot does not think there should be much data on Joe Creedy. I think that's probably fair.
Yeah, but he's a meme, so we have to call him out apparently.
Yep. But there hasn't been a peak card for him yet, right?
No, I suppose there has not.
So could still have a peak Creedy. You never know. All
I suppose
right.
that's possible.
Shortstop. Let's do some shortstops.
Yes.
Where
Let us
not too
short some
surprisingly,
stops.
not too surprisingly, if we liked Scales at second, we like him even more at short. So he's going to be up there. Then you've got the Gold Vern Stevens. That's still a really expensive card, right? I'm surprised that was not
I'm
one
pretty
of
sure, yeah.
the ones available in the choice packs. But that's an excellent card, and I still need to get myself one. Right?
Yeah.
And then this Travis Jackson. So that's a card I really hadn't looked at until like doing the prep work for the stream. I don't know if you've run into him much. You get 94 range, and then it's kind of a weird bat, right? Gap power, little bit of contact, and just sort of average across the board, plus 100 bunt for hit. So you can crank that slider a little bit. But I was still surprised that this card ranked so highly. And then if you go outside the top three, so actually fourth is Bregman. So as good as Bregman is at third base, you can play him at short. Bregman, the limited edition Elster ends up there. Then Granny Hamner, Toby Hara, Dick McAuliffe. So you got a few good options here. So Simba does not end up in the top 15. And the defense is great, but I think the bat just is too much of a disaster probably. Would be, at least that's what Warbot's saying. On the other hand, it's worth pointing out that if you look in the observed data, because OOTP's war calculation is really favors the shortstop defense, he actually ends up at the top of the observed data. And Glenn Wright, with the enormous range, ends up second. Right, and that Glenn Wright with 103 range is also playing in some perfect league builds right now. I don't think I've seen Simba in perfect league builds.
No. Oh no, he does not show up.
Well, I guess the idea is if you're going to run that, then you'd rather run Wright in 102 range than Simba with 100 range.
Yeah, or the other guy whose name I can't remember at the moment.
Well, I'm running Tinker, if that helps. That's no.
There's another card with like 104 range and no bad.
Fletcher's got huge range.
So you see Fletcher and Wright. You don't really see Simba.
I mean, the other card with 104 range and no bat is Ozzy. He's in a lot of builds.
Ozzy does not have no bat. and I take offense to that.
So
He doesn't have like a huge bat, but uh, he has an okayish bat.
it's fair. Let's see. Oh yeah, what does Warbot say, by the way, if you're gonna run a platoon? So scale's the one way, and then this is where Warbot really likes Granny Hamner because you're still getting the range, but the bat's a little bit better as a platoon guy. No, I agree. Ozzy is less of a no bat than the other cards we're talking about than Tinker or some. There's kind of this hierarchy of non bats, right? And Ozzy's probably toward the top end of it. Where someone like Pop Lloyd really has no bat, or Fletcher
You're not
or Simba.
rostering Ozzy for his bat, but it's not like he has an his bat's okay,
I mean, look, I can't complain too
right?
much because I am now trying to run Evers on the same principle. So, although I may give up on that experiment pretty
I mean,
soon.
my middle infield has been Ozzie Smith and Pop Lloyd for weeks, and they've been doing just fine.
You mean perfect league champions, Ozzy and Pop Lloyd?
Yeah, of course.
So
I mean, to be fair, Pop Lloyd is batting like 300 lifetime for my team, so
I think
shrug.
clearly everybody else's pops are just broken then.
That's probably it.
All right, biggest winner at short, by the way, again is Simba. So just a lot of people are running him, and he's doing fine. And you definitely can build defensively around him. I think a lot of this comes down to just how you feel OOTP is doing at valuing war in these different environments, and that's probably a much longer discussion, given the timing. But
Yeah.
all right, budget
I
options. Go ahead. Yep.
so I do think I want to say very briefly that Pop Lloyd is the card I was the most wrong on this year. Turns out he's not poop. He's great.
Really? Okay. I have never been
Shoestring
able to get
award.
anything out of Pop Lloyd.
Pop Lloyd is an absolutely miserable shortstop and one of the best second basemen in the game.
The one that I really missed on was I should have actually taken a few seasons and fully trained Concepcion at second. He had a lot more
Uh,
staying power than I mean, not anymore, but he had more staying power than I thought he was going to.
yes and no. Um, the problem, and maybe he came back in a little bit, but the problem for a while there was that there just wasn't any left-handed pitching worth mentioning, and he can't hit righties like at all. But
Yeah.
uh,
Anyway, let's see. So for a budget, I think this is a good point to maybe highlight one of the new cards because everyone we've been talking about here, we were looking was expensive. And then there's this Pythias Russ, which I think is my favorite of the new Negro League, at least the gold cards, and maybe just my favorite overall.
yeah, that rates a solid. I'm sorry, who out of 10?
Russ, you mean?
Yeah, that's a nice shape for a bat, though.
All right. Then allow me to tell you about Pythias Russ, because you're going to hear a
Please
lot
do.
about him
I would
on
love to
Warbot
hear.
Stream.
Give me the lowdown
All right.
on your boy Pythias.
So first off, you see the bat, right? He doesn't
I do
have
see the
power,
bat.
but basically no split. Let me start with that. The split is 2 points of BABIP, 3 points of power, 3 points of contact, no gap power, 4 points of I. So you can completely run him both ways. 73 speed with 102 stealing, so he will steal a few bases and you can trust him to try it. 80 base running. You get 82 range, which isn't great for shortstop, but again, he's also 85 overall, so he plays gold. But the other cool thing about this card is he is eligible at first base and catcher.
Yep. It's important to have some of those around.
So this is a card that's like Beckwith or Daly or something like that, except just a much better version.
Well, there you are then. I suppose I'm sold.
And he's not super expensive, right? I mean, it's a new packable, so because of the missions, he's not immediately cheap, but he won't be expensive in the long run. And
Right.
you do get a 71 catcher ability out of him. So, it's not what you really want behind the plate. But if you're trying to figure out a way to kind of spread out positions and get flexibility, the fact that he plays shortstop and catcher is really valuable. And the bat is good enough that if you have to stick him at first base, you're not going to be happy. But if everybody's tired and you're just trying to get some rest, you can stick him at first base and not have it be a black hole.
That is valuable, especially in longer tournaments.
So I'm sure we'll talk about him more when we do a gold stream, but that's a great card. And I was really happy to find him for a PTCS build too, right? The one that had a high gold floor.
Mm-hmm.
The combination of him, yeah, exactly. The combination of him and let's see. Hey, McCall, yeah, hey, you just won a McAuliffe. Well, that's good timing then for a low diamond stream. Let's see. All right. So what are we actually running here? So I'm running Glenn Wright. This is one where I actually am not going with Warbot. I'm going with the defense instead and just picking the best glove I can find. And it looks like you, or at least Ben Trees,
Yeah.
are
Yeah. Looks like we're running Simba because and I just got done saying I was glad I didn't have to defend any of these choices. Uh, because I'm a big Simba homer.
Let's see. Just pulled a Gehrig. Hey, congrats. You don't even know what to do now. Well, I'll give you my advice. Put him in the lineup and let him mash.
Luke Cook, is that where we are?
Pretty much.
With apologies to what's his name?
Yep. No Fletcher. Well, the Diamond Fletcher's not eligible for low diamond. If you mean the Art Fletcher, is that the one you're asking about? Okay, yeah. So Art
Yep.
Fletcher
Ineligible card not considered.
definitely can play in league, but cannot play in low diamond. So sign at the game that said "Let's cook Russ."
Yeah, there you go.
All right, all right. Let's get to some outfielders.
Yeah.
So in the interest of not making this a two-part stream or anything. All right, we'll go a little quicker. All right, let's start with the model here. So just like we talked about in gold, Charlie Keller is just great. And I think the other interesting thing here is that Bob Allison is listed as a first baseman, but probably profiles even better in left because there are all of these first base bats available that don't play left.
The thing again, I'm smiling and I'm nodding in agreement, and no one can see it.
All right. Well, let's go on to some data then for comparison.
Yes,
And
let's.
this, I think, is my favorite bit here. So Ducky, it makes sense that he could be up there in the
Hey.
observed data because, Ducky's completely a platoon bat, right? And clearly it's from, it's being run by one or two people that are winning, a quarter of the time. So it's being run by a strong manager that knows how to use a platoon bat like that. But I'm really happy to see that limited edition Bo Jackson up here.
Fun.
It's limited sample size. I don't think the card is really playable in the long run, but I really wanted that card to be good.
Justice hashtag justice for Bo.
Yeah.
That's not a real hashtag. Don't go hashtagging.
No. No, but I really wanted that card to be good. I wanted the bronze bow to be a little bit more playable. I still take the bronze bow in perfect drafts just for fun.
Sure.
It'll fill up after the pitches get revealed in about 3 hours. No, we'll try to go quicker. Um, also Giles up there, even though that's really a platoon bat, just because it's such a good platoon bat. Um, all right, so what do we actually run if we platoon? Well, you'll definitely run Giles, and I think this is where Stanton shows up, right? I mean, just look at the bat, right? You're getting 123 power and 90 eye and 94 contact versus lefties. He's not really a left fielder, but he sort of is, right? That 57, it's really trainable up to 90. So he'll probably play a bit better than 57.
Yeah. Yeah, jeez.
So it's a playable card, but
Sorry, I'm having a coughing fit.
you all right?
Be fine.
All right. Yeah, Stanton, a ton of plate appearances. Definitely. The thing is, everyone has Stanton because he's in, yeah. Everyone has Stanton because he's just in a mission that's, finishable. But
Also,
then
he's
it's an excellent
excellent.
card. Stanton is also, no, I'm wrong. I assumed Stanton was. That must be wrong. That's because Stanton's listed in right field. That's why I was going to say. I assume Stanton will be the biggest winner, but it's not. It's Giles because Stanton's listed in right field. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right. On the other hand, if you're going to go with a budget pick, I don't think you can do too much better than Stanton. Easy to get, achievable mission, and you just want to play him somewhere in low diamond. Even though there aren't as many lefties in the format, he's so good that I think you still want to find room for him somewhere in your build. All right, what are we actually running here? So this is where I'm running Higginson, and there's no data on Higginson or Allison, which I guess is one way of saying I don't play low diamond much.
Sure.
Higginson gets you so much more defense than a lot of these other splitty bats. I like him even better as a right fielder. And I'm kind of running him to some extent a little bit in both. I'm kind of running him to some extent a little bit both ways. He is splitty, but you get a lot more defense, and I do think he still needs to be in builds if you can get one. And then I'm running Allison. Just look at what you get from that card. You can play him in left. You can play him, of course, you can play him at first. He's not super splitty, so you can play him both ways. He is eligible in center and right as well. I don't think you really want to let him play center, but he can play a little bit of right. So that's a card I think should be in more builds. And then you are you're the person running Medwick.
Joe Medwick.
Like.
We're just running good cards. Yeah. You know why Joe Medwick shows up best observed? Because my team is great.
It is a pretty simple format. Just take the best cards and run them.
For those of you tuning in late, this is not my team, so I feel fully justified in overhyping everything.
I still wonder whether bend trees, though, is from Oregon or like an admonishment.
You mean an imperative?
Yeah. Yeah,
It's like, look, no, I'm going to need you to go bend some trees.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, go bend some trees. Like, no. We'll have to have him on one of these days and we can ask.
We were trying, but we'll bring him back.
Just didn't work. Didn't work out this time.
Well, it's still not, it's still kind of early in the day in Oregon, or maybe he's out logging. I don't know.
That's probably it. That makes sense.
So, all right.
Can't imagine it being.
Sure. You're saying if you have none of the left fielders, we can mention a few other left fielders to look at. So Stanton, I would think you have. So in the model after Stanton, then comes Higginson, the limited edition Abreu. Uh, you could just play the Ted Williams actually from missions one way. You could platoon Ted and Stanton. That would be a cheap way to do it. Brian Downing even ends up there. Bernie Carbo, the new Wilson Reedus, the Negro League star. So a few options in there, but it's true that all of the top options here are special editions or limited editions. So you pretty much need the right mission or the right tournament result to get one of these, or else you're going to be getting them in the card shop. Woodling I think is the second or third best packable in the model. Bernie Carbo and Chuck Klein are also up there, but Klein is really splitty.
Edition Alu rate well.
Not really in the model. I don't actually remember what that card looks like. Is that? Oh, well, that's right. That's the card that kind of has no eye and no power, and so Warbot's definitely not going to be a big fan. All right, should we go on to center? Center's an easy one.
Yes, let's go on to center.
Shockingly enough, top of the model in center is Ken Griffey. If you can get a Griffey, get a Griffey. I think that's almost all we need to say about center for anyone that's able to get a Griffey, right?
That seems pretty straightforward. It's going to be hard.
If you go beyond the top three, the new Platinum Andy Van Slyke, Larry Doby, Richie Ashburn, the Diamond Builder lineup. Giles can play center. Max Carey, kind of fits a lot of builds. Mike Griffin, Kevin Kiermaier. Bob Allison even plays center technically. There's limited edition Glanville with a bit of defense. I wish Doby were more available actually. I'm talking about the Platinum Tournament Doby, that is, not the gold newly released Doby. All right, in the observed data, it's Griffey. So we don't have any data on Lynn, which is a new release, or on Roush. So when we get some data, maybe they'll come in a little bit higher in the observed as well. But basically, it's Griffey. If you can get Griffey, yeah.
Just go get Griffey. What's wrong with you?
So the reason Warbot likes Fred Lynn, well, I think first off, you are getting the defense in center. And one of the things about the current pool of low diamond center fielders is there aren't a lot of great defensive ones available. That's why someone like Kiermaier is still really playable. So there's nothing super exciting about Lynn's bat, but it's a playable enough bat with good defense, I guess, is the way to describe it. And it seems like all of the other center field options that you have either have no power or have some other kind of flaw with the card. Like if you compare, say, Lynn and Max Carey, right? If you just look at the bats, you're getting a switch hitter in Carey, but Lynn should just be the better bat by a fair bit, right? A lot more contact, a little more eye, some more power. So I think that should be a solid card.
Right. Sure. Nothing about it screams that it won't.
Let's see. If you're going to platoon, well, to be fair, Ken Griffey is much better versus righties than lefties, but
True.
He still is also your best option versus lefties. Basically, if you can get a Ken Griffey, get a Ken Griffey. Yeah.
You can't get a Ken Griffey, just be set.
Your biggest winner is not Ken Griffey simply because there aren't enough of them out there. So it's actually the Richie Ashburn just due to availability. But you notice Griffey is winning over twice as often as Ashburn. So it's actually fairly close between the two for biggest winner as well. Griffey's great in Diamond. I'm still running Griffey in some parks in Perfect League. I think I might be the only one at this point crazy enough to do
It's
it.
true. I've seen it. I've seen him do it.
Uh, Pretty sure the last time I ran him in your park, I got swept, as opposed to the last time I didn't run him in your park and got swept, and the time I ran him in the playoffs in your park and got swept. But there may be other reasons for that.
It doesn't sound quite right, but uh, if that happened, then that cool, I guess. Question mark.
Um, let's see. All right. So how about a budget option? Because unfortunately, Griffey's not a budget option, and really, Lynn just as a new card is still not super cheap. Uh, Roush, I haven't seen that card much at all. I feel like I've only seen it in one or two tournaments. So there may, for whatever reason, just not be as many of them out there. Uh, let's see. So, all right. What do we got here, though? Is a budget option? That's right. It's a good point. It's a good point to just mention that actually, with all the defense you get from the Kiermaier that everyone has available from missions, this is still a really playable card in low diamond. Uh, and in fact, what Ben was telling us was that, they've been running Griffey, but if they don't have a Griffey, they would then play Kiermaier, which is kind of interesting. You're sitting there nodding again, huh?
No, I actually said something this time.
Oh, then I didn't hear you.
Oh, I might have mumbled it a little bit. That's my bad.
All right, so what are we actually running? Okay, fine. There's really no shock here. We're running Griffey. Yeah, just run Griffey.
Running Griffey? Okay, good.
So.
Yeah, we need you to go back in time and have had the foresight to know that this card was just going to be the low diamond center fielder for the next 4 months and buy one when they were available.
Have there been any on the market recently?
I have no idea.
Let me see. No, there are a couple buy orders up. Last 10 of 163. So maybe that's actually a good question. So if someone wanted to buy your Griffey, at this point, what's the price at which you would actually sell one? Knowing that you're not getting one back the rest of the cycle.
What would it take to if someone, what is the offer I can't refuse?
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe 500K?
Okay. Yeah, I was sort of thinking something in the 300 to 400 range, probably somewhere around there. I should let him go. But actually, the more I thought about it,
sure.
the more I thought I actually wouldn't. That I play enough tournaments, and he's in every cap build, and I think yeah.
I think there's probably a number somewhere in the 300 to 350 range where I probably should sell it, but 500K is where it starts to get into the okay range.
Yeah, I mean, I think actually, I think probably I would do it only at the level that I could get one huge, meta tournament card or something.
Sure.
So probably in the 600 to 800 range is probably where I would really do it. But I would feel stupid turning down 300 or 400K, knowing that at some point the card gets surpassed.
I mean, probably. There's no guarantee that it does.
That's true. All right. Well, anyway, brief answer in center field. Get a Griffey. So let's do some right field. So as usual, we start with the model. And this is where the model prefers putting Giles. We also still have that limited edition of Abreu that we talked about a lot with gold. And that card is just nuts. 105i and still plays some defense and still does these other things. He's really splitty, but again, it's a mostly right-handed meta. And then this JD Drew is a card I almost had never looked at. And, when I kind of went and looked at it for the stream, I can kind of see what's going on, right? It's also a very splitty card. 18 more points of eye versus right, 17 more points of power. Like, you have to platoon him. But a really solid card. And again, one where if you're thinking about getting one, probably better to do it now than a few hours from now, right?
Yeah, probably so. Again, with the caveat that it might already be too late.
Might already, yeah. That's fair.
Prices on Platinum 2 cards have been creeping up since
Well, I think
whenever it
I
was
I think
formally
I think
announced, like
everyone knows
Monday,
that
Tuesday.
when I think everyone knows that when they announce a mission is coming, it means that the mission is coming.
Well, sure.
So, all right. So, what about the observed data? Especially given that we have such limited data on, Abreu and to some extent Giles. So, where are we at in the observed data? So number one in the observed data is actually this Andy Van Slyke, and that's a really interesting card. I think we had mentioned him, that he kind of ends up fourth uh, in center field, right behind Ed Roush. So his list is a center fielder, but like a lot of center fielders, when they're fully trained, even better when you put them in the corners, right?
Yeah,
Because you're
yeah,
only
it's
getting
true.
81 range, but you're getting 92 arm. So that's why he looks so much better in right. Is sort of given the shape, he should be a right fielder, and a lot of gap power. So kind of a little hidden boost to the card there. I still don't think he should be hitting as well as he is in the limited sample. So this probably overrates him a bit. And then we've got Stanton, who I think we had talked about maybe more as a left fielder, and this Jack Clark, which is I'm sure a card we're going to talk about more at DH.
Yes, yes, I would expect so.
So Warbot really sees Jack Clark as needing to be a DH, if at all possible. So after Abreu, we get Keller and then Doby. Then we do get Jack Clark anyway because the bat is so good. Stanton, Bob Allison, Van Slyke. You get Roger Maris. Then Rusty Staub sort of is up there. Chuck Klein. So you get a few options here, but I do think Clark probably with that defense is an even better fit at DH. Let's see. If you're going to platoon somebody, so their Warbot says, Clark is just so good against lefty. I mean, look at what you get against lefties. You get 111 power, 125 eye, 116 gap power. Is that actually the most in the game to this point? The 116 gap power?
That's not something I keep track of, but if you told me that, I'd believe you.
Definitely might be. And not a ton of the value is coming from BABIP, which also means that the card plays up. If I had one, I actually thought about DHing this Clark just in my league roster.
Sure.
I still think I'd rather, instead of platooning him, I still think I'd rather just run him at DH. But I don't have one, so it doesn't really matter. So, all right, biggest
Yeah.
winner. Biggest winner is Stanton, just because he's on everybody's team somewhere, and that makes sense. So, as for a budget option, I think there are a couple budget options that that we can mention. So, there is this problem that basically every one of the cards we're talking about, just is expensive at this point. There aren't a lot of cheap options in the outfield and low diamond. But
Lots of options. None of them cheap.
yeah. So maybe the best one we can recommend, at least the cheapest in the top 10, and he's not super cheap, is still this Van Slyke, and I feel bad recommending that one because I'm not sure that's going to be cheap very much longer. But if you go further down, it's really hard to find some good options because it's all of these kind of special edition type cards at the top.
Watch out for Sid Brame though.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm not quite sure what you do if you can't find one of these. Maybe Chuck Klein. I mean, I can put that one up. Um,
Sell order. Oh my. Yeah, that's wishful thinking.
on which one?
On Andy Van Slyke.
Oh, what's the? Is there a huge sell order up currently or something?
Yeah.
Oh, 59K. I can't tell if that's too high or too low because if you think about it as mission spec, maybe that's not crazy. But if you think about it just as like a packable value, that's crazy.
I mean, it's definitely crazy.
I will bet he sells for that after the missions come out. At least for like an hour. I bet that sell order will fill at some point tonight.
I'm sort of thinking on whether that's something I'd be willing to bet on or not.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
are all about making incredibly short-sighted decisions on Thursday nights. So,
Exactly.
maybe.
Yeah, I think the best thing you can do when the new missions come out is just wait till the next morning and then decide what you wanna chase.
Yeah, most of the time that's true.
But it's more fun being first, right?
It depends. It depends on how many pieces you already have and how painful it is to get from here to there.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, so what are we actually running here? Um, let's see. So I'm running Keller and Stanton, and it looks like you're just doing the whole take a great card and run it thing.
Yeah, that seems to be a running theme on this team that I definitely built.
I mean, it's what can I say? It's boring, but it's effective, right?
It is my style though, right? Like just throw good cards at it and hope for the best.
Just run the best cards and not worry about it. So Heavy Johnson's not eligible for low diamond, or else he'd end up. I think he would end up in good shape, but he's 95, so he just misses. Um, the Maglio that so Warbot doesn't love the card for two reasons with Ordonia. So one is he really isn't a right fielder. You get 51 range, 44 arm in right field. So I think Maglio has to be a DH, I would say. And then as a DH, basically as a right-handed hitting DH, you're comparing him with Jack Clark, and as soon as you compare anybody against Jack Clark, uh, you lose.
Yeah, Jack Clark is
Right. I think that's
shoot. I
in
know there's an
fact,
industry term
yeah.
for this. Good. There we go. Found
Yeah,
it.
I mean, I think it's the same reason that I ended up sort of taking Jimmy Fox. Like I think Jimmy Fox now, for the first time, really is dead because of Clark.
I'd hesitate to call him dead, but I get where you're coming from.
Yeah. All right. Well, and finally, let's talk about Jack Clark. Should we?
Sure.
Warbot, not too surprisingly, really likes Jack Clark.
You've got the designated clerk, yeah.
I mean, even on his bad side, he's great. But this card, just as soon as it came out, felt broken. And, I think if there's a card that, really does deserve to still be, a 300K card, this is the card, right? Basically, this card is as overpowered for DH as Griffey is overpowered as a center fielder.
as Downing is at catcher.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I think that's just where you have to do it. And then we talked about Abreu and Matthews and a couple of these other guys before. So in the data, we've tried to kind of pick out people actually being run at DH. Okay, so Prince Fielder's up there as well. You know, Ducky a little bit, Clark. So again, kind of the usual suspects. And I think these are all bats that you would like in your lineup. Maybe except Ducky, that maybe is a small sample size, but certainly defendable. Uh, let's see. All right, if you're gonna platoon, so because Warbot sort of thinks that when you're platooning you can play Clark and right, then Warbot still sort of is willing to put Jimmy Fox here. And then sort of Eddie Matthews pretty clearly the other way in terms of just what you get one-sided. I think, though, probably if you have all the cards available, you're probably not going to play Clark and Wright, and you probably are going to end up taking Fox off the roster instead, would be my guess. I don't know. Have you invested in a Clark yet? Or have you not taken the plunge?
No, that's just to kind of go back to the beginning of the stream. I've been putting pretty much all of my time and effort for the last couple months into league play, so I have not gone after any of the really expensive tournament pieces.
I see.
Right. So when I get knocked back out of Perfect League this week, I can sell off a few cards and maybe go get myself a Jack Clark.
That was my plan, but we're still treading water this week, so we'll see. Oh, hey, thank you for the raid, Nursha Benko.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
All right.
Welcome to a stream that's mercifully approaching its end.
At least half over.
At least.
Right. Biggest winner, by the way, is still Jimmy Fox because he's on all the builds. So for a budget pick, I think there are a bunch of options that you could give here, right? We had certainly talked about Jimmy Fox, for example, as a possible budget pick, but you can also run him at first, and really a lot of the budget picks we talked about before would fit here, right? But
Yeah.
I think just for fun, we should point out that if you cannot get Jack Clark, a surprisingly acceptable alternative is Jack Clark.
Yeah, that's totally a thing we could do.
This is also kind of a somewhat broken bat, isn't it? And he's eligible for low gold.
Yeah.
But this is an excellent packable that, again, you'd really like to run him at DH. This one's eligible at first base in the same way that kind of the right field Jack Clark is eligible at first base, and maybe that's another way to do it.
Sure.
But really a solid option. If you can't find a Jack Clark, you can just get a Jack Clark. So let's see. Oh, here you go. He's down to 295K. So there's a discount Jack Clark available if anyone wants one in the auction house.
Now that you've said that,
is he possible? Is he gone already?
No. No, absolutely not.
Let's see. All right. So what are we actually running here? I do not have a Jack Clark, so we have actually some interesting things to discuss here. So what am I doing? I'm running John Morrill first off because he gets on base. I wanted Morrill on the roster as a backup in a bunch of places anyway, and this is just as good a place as any for him to fit. Right? He's got 104i against righties. And he's got gap power, and it just works.
Are you saying this is where you're showing him, or like he is the DH over here?
No, he is the guy I'm DHing.
Okay.
But I wanted him on the roster anyway, and then of the people I want on the roster, he fits.
Sure.
The other way is a problem because Ferris Fane we showed him at first base, and he is pretty splitty. He's really solid against righties, and really shouldn't be facing lefties. And this is just kind of where I had to sacrifice a position because, as we mentioned at the top, there aren't switch hitters in this format. I don't think we've shown a single switch hitter. No, one of the shortstops, right? We showed one shortstop switch hitter, I think. Um, we've shown almost no switch hitters here. You're going to end up running a few people in your build on the wrong side of their platoon, and so this is where I ended up getting stuck. And it looks like you're doing the same thing here, right? You're running Prince Fielder on still an okay
Yep,
side, but
definitely me who definitely put this together. We're running Prince Fielder because you only get to carry so many position players. So this was like one of the least bad options. Which is to
yeah,
say, it's still pretty excellent.
it is. But if you had one more roster position, you would rather have, say, Jimmy Fox,
Sure,
on this side of the platoon.
sure. If I got to run 28 players, yeah, why not?
So, okay, so there we go. We got some hitters. We're speeding up a little bit. Should we talk some pitchers real quick?
Sure.
All right, let's talk some quick pitchers. I guess that's a balk, isn't it?
Um, no, like you can, well, huh. All right, you talk about pitchers, and I'm gonna mull that one over.
All right. As usual, we'll start with the model. And, particularly with all the power in this format, the model just says you need a bunch of movement and ideally something that's not super splitty, although we can tolerate it, if need be. So, a couple things to highlight at the top here, right? First off, Herb Pennock is still just an excellent card, and in particular, there's several options that have either almost no split or even reverse split. So this Pennock with reverse splits, Dutch has slight reverse splits as well. Meadows has a huge reverse split, which is really nice. Altrock has reverse split. So you actually could, I think, get an entirely reverse split rotation. And I think that just helps a lot in a format where you have so many platoon bats that are being run. In particular, when you've got this format that is so left-handed, being able to run lefties so it's so right-handed otherwise in terms of the pitching, being able to run a bunch of lefties with reverse splits, I think, is a great idea. The other thing is we should mention this Jim Lamarck card, because that's probably the most interesting one of the new Negro Leagues for this, right?
Yeah, that's one of the few non-silver and gold cards because boy, we're like the middle tiers of the Negro League cards. Just I was about to say diamonds, like and that they're great, but Lamarck is good.
Yeah.
Stood out like from everything that was released as like
Yeah, I wanted to run him in the PTCS and just couldn't find a copy under about 120K, and you know so that's true. Guys like Clark do still mash lefties even with reverse splits, Mr. Black. And I think part of this is realizing that there just aren't so many Clarks available yet. So you're probably not going to see a ton in this format, but maybe it's worth thinking about. If Clark becomes more prevalent, you'd have to worry a little more, right? Um, let's see. Yeah, and I think the other thing is the general shape. Because there are some good defensive options out there, Warbot at least is still happy to get away with lower stuff here and just kind of let the defense do its job. The observed data may be a little different though, right? So the observed data, you still have guys with a fair bit of movement, but it's not quite kind of low, high, high, or low, high, middle. You see a few guys with stuff in there as well, right? So
You
someone
do.
with a shape like Altrock does not end up doing as well in the observed data. I don't know, Mike, if you wanted to jump in.
You pretty well covered it. I mean, I'm just kind of looking at the two lists.
Yeah, so. I guess a few things that jump out to me here, right? One is that a lot of the people at the top of the Warbot list simply aren't being run often enough to get much data. So it's really
Sure,
tough to compare
that's
these two
true.
lists right now. Uh, Both lists are doing really well in terms of win rate. And of course, with the small sample size, the observed data are going to have a lot of people with ERAs well below FIPS and things like that. Um, but they're not actually all that dissimilar in terms of the shape, right? And I think this is more similar than a lot of the lists that we've seen in general.
And I think a number of the pitchers that don't show up in the results would probably show well.
Yeah, well,
Um,
I guess 3 of the 4 pitchers that are on Warbot's list and have data are in the top 10 for the data as well.
I mean, honest, if I'm completely honest, the one thing that I'm noticing here is that there's a really sweet looking low diamond Dutch Ruther, and I want it.
Yeah,
It was a
that's an excellent
he had
card.
a silver card. He had a silver card last year that I tried really hard to make work, and I just never quite could. Um, but I have a soft spot in my heart for knuckleballers.
Yeah, I really do too. Knuckleball, screwball, anything that kind of, you know, isn't splitty. Wait, that's
Yeah,
crazy. He's a knuckleballer that still has 76 hold runners.
that is kind of wild, actually. Now that you mention it,
How much stuff is not enough stuff? It depends how good you are at everything else, I guess. I know that that's not saying much. It's a
that's a pretty
trade-off,
fair
right?
answer.
I mean, in the sense that you're looking for ways to get people out. So, one way to say it is the way FIP is calculated. Essentially, 13 strikeouts equals 3 walks equals 2 home runs. So, if you're going to, strike out fewer people but also walk fewer people, it doesn't have to be that good of an exchange, you know, in order for that to be a good deal. And it also depends a lot on your defense because when you don't strike people out, the way the game engine works, not striking people out doesn't add to the walk or home run rate. It basically gives you more BABIP rolls. So the better your defense is, the more you're willing to accept low stuff guys. If you're running some of the really big defensive cards in your middle infield, then a ground baller with low stuff is perfectly fine. I'd have no problem
Um,
running Pennick or Alt Rock or something. If you're,
just looking
yeah,
at what's I was gonna say, just looking at what's going on here. My rule of thumb would be kind of like mid 50s. If you're much lower than that, you better be doing something else exceptionally well.
I mean, to put it another way, I'm certainly happy running Quisenberry as a high leverage option. We'll talk about the relievers in a minute, but I'm certainly happy running Quisenberry because he does 2 things excellently. He doesn't give up homers and he doesn't walk people.
We do like not giving up home runs, and we do like not walking people.
Yeah. And the other thing is that there's even a bit of a trade-off there because you can play with your pitch around sliders as well when you have a big control card. All right, let's see. All right, if you're gonna run somebody, let's say you're absolutely certain that you're gonna, do something funny with an opener and wrong side someone. we'll just mention a couple really splitty starters. That do seem to profile well on the right side, but I don't think you want to be running in general here because there are too many platoon bats that will just come in as pinch hitters and crush these cards. But you could run Tin Cup versus righties, and this Silver Bob Veal, is really good against lefties. I still don't think I can run him even in silver.
You can definitely run Bob Veal in silver.
I feel like just right-handed batters still exist is the problem.
Sure, I don't think you want to start him in silver, but you can certainly.
Okay, you can run him as a specialist or something. I could see that.
Yeah, or just running him out of the pen in general. Like for silver, even his VR numbers aren't like miserable. So, like, I think you can run him in the pen just fine.
Yeah, I think I actually did have him in my PTCS build. I think I tried him as a starter, just sort of hoping that there weren't as many righty bats in that particular format, and it still didn't work great. So.
It happened.
I don't know. You said you ran him in the pen. How did it end up going?
I mean, he was fabulous, obviously.
Yeah, Ashby, I could see that profile as a specialist too. All right, it was okay. All right, let's see. Right, so what are we actually doing here? Well, first off, biggest winners. Biggest winners. Where are the biggest winners? There are the biggest winners. So the biggest winners are still going to be the cards, for the most part, that that are widely available. So actually, not too dissimilar from the list we were just looking at. In fact, I think all 5 of these kind of are on the observe list, and most of these are on the Warbot list as well. Kind of makes sense that these are for the most part the cards that you're going to be running if you have a stock build right now. So what about some budget picks? And a few of the cards we were talking about definitely are expensive. Lamarck, for example, I don't think you're going to get cheaply for a while. Some of the special editions are a little bit tough to get. But you can get most of the cards on this list reasonably cheaply. And actually, this Dutch Ruther that we were looking at, of course, now that I say this, okay. Now that I say this, actually, I noticed that the price has jumped a lot since I looked at this a few hours ago. So maybe Dutch is not a good budget pick anymore. Now that I look at it.
Did we do this?
I hope we're not the ones that did this. But his price is like doubled since we looked. Okay, well, going back to the list, there are a couple other options you could look at. Actually, the Bill McGee is still reasonably cheap. Maybe that's an option. The others are cheap. And Pennick in particular, I think Pennick and Garcia and Meadows are all also really nice ways to finish some of the build a lineup missions if you're still working on those. Is there a way to remove yourself from a tournament? If it hasn't fired yet, then you'll be able to withdraw from the tournament or from the list of tournaments. You'll be able to click the plus and then withdraw. If the tournament's already fired, then you can't really remove yourself. You just got to run the tournament. Although usually when that happens, you end up feeling stuck in it and winning packs, right?
It happens more often than you'd think, yeah.
Yep. All right, so what are we actually running here? Let me see what we got. So I'm actually still running the gold Kevin Brown. uh, which now that I look at these lists, I think I'm going to replace with Lamarck when I get a chance. But otherwise, I'm kind of running the set of cards we were talking about. And what are you running? So you're running something similar, except that in the 5 slot, you're running this Noodles Han, who in really limited observed data is absolutely killing everybody. 380 ERA, although 459 FIP.
Obviously, Noodles Han is, yeah.
I mean, it's nice to have lefties in this format. He's pretty splitless. Um,
Doesn't look like a terrible option. Also doesn't look exciting, but I'm guessing he'll wind up playing out closer to the FIP than the ERA in this relatively small sample size.
that's my guess as well. But even the
But
FIP,
even so, that'd be pretty good.
that would be fine. Yeah. Um, I mean, I think this is one where I go back and go back to the model a little bit again because in the limited sample size, this is the one where I think the model should be doing best. There's like Pennick, 440 FIP. That's about where. In fact, I realized actually for the model I do have projected stats. Yeah, so the model says Pennick should be at about a 432 FIP, is what it's projecting. Um, and then there's actually a pretty big gap. The next set are kind of in the 450s and 460s. And Noodles ends up at about a 470. So not quite the top 10 in the model, but not too far off. So okay, maybe that's reasonable. And I guess otherwise we're running pretty similar builds, right? So maybe not too much to discuss there.
That's we are running.
Yep.
You and I who both run this format on the regular are both
Yes,
running.
yes, exactly. All right.
Yes.
So let's talk about some relievers then. So one thing we do each of these formats is kind of ask, are you generally better off running converted starters or running relievers? And at least Warbot's pretty clear answer here is that the relievers are better than everything except for, or the best 5 or 6 relievers are better than sort of the number 6 starter. But that after that, you could run a combination. So probably we'd expect to see a little bit of a mixture on this list, but the people at the very top are still probably going to be, actually listed as relievers. And in fact, that's at least what Warbot comes up with here, is that the top 10 are all listed as relievers. So there are a couple interesting things on this list. We have no data on Wohlers, huh? I guess just because that's sort of a newer card, but that's one of my favorite relief cards from the new set.
Is that a tournament card? It looks like it's
Yeah,
labeled as a tournament.
that's a tournament special edition. There are also a couple live cards in here, and one is this Schreiber that we've discussed a bunch before. You've got to run him as a specialist. You really can't do anything else, right? But if you think you can get the AI manager to only throw him against righties, which is 53% of the hitters here, he absolutely kills righties. So I don't know. I still don't think I'm actually willing to run that card, but the Trevor Stephan, on the other hand, I think is much more runnable.
Imagining
Also
it
as a
being
live card.
prohibitively expensive, also.
Yeah. And at least this Quisenberry Warbot thinks is very runnable as well. The other thing that's not shown here, but I think should be mentioned is this Jason Isringhausen. So Warbot loves the profile. He's essentially splitless, very slight reverse split even, which is wonderful. But this card has an enormous flaw which is not picked up by Warbot. He has one hold runners.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's some. Uh, I don't think it's necessarily a solved problem how much that matters.
Yeah, I think it's unclear. I also think, I remember we actually went back and looked at the actual historical data on this, and it was a little bit unfortunate. Uh, he literally, was 0 for 1 caught stealing off him. That's the season that this is modeled off of.
Right.
So, Remlinger, so right outside of the top 10, 11 is Rigetti, then the gold Axford, live Brian Baker, Mike Remlinger, and Clay Holmes. So Remlinger just misses the top 10, but if you're looking to get more lefties, then Remlinger definitely should be playable. All right, and how about the observed? So
How
again,
about
for
the observed?
if we thought we had limited sample size for the starters, this is going to be even more true for the relievers. But
Wonderful.
here we go. So Assenmacher actually right at the top of both lists is nice. This O'Day definitely should be playable. So a couple of these converted starters, Vandermeer. Which PV is that? That's the mission PV. Is that right? There's a tournament edition PV that's a high diamond, I think. But that is the low diamond the mission reward, or am I mixing them up?
I think that I'm in the board. I want to say the tournament's like a 99.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The tournament's the 99, and so this is the 93. So one thing that almost all the converged starters doing really well here have in common is that they don't have big splits. Right? Maybe the biggest split on any of these is this Linscomb. All
Big
right.
time Timmy Jim.
Yes, yes. All right. And if you're gonna run specialists, I think out of the pen is where it's much more doable. So we'll just highlight a couple cards, that just are crazy if you get to run them on their good side. We talked about Knowles before, and this Kent Tekulve, that's a guy I remember as a kid. And this is definitely an appropriate card. Absolutely unhittable if you're a righty, and much more hittable if you're a lefty.
Describe his style of pitching in like 2 sentences.
Well, the main thing is I rarely remember him managing to stay on the mound after a delivery.
Ah, okay.
Although, the guy I actually would love to see a good card of is a Mitch Williams.
Sure.
He's
That
the
could be
only
fun.
guy I can remember who, when he'd finish his delivery, would actually be facing away from the batter. Which I still don't know how he didn't just completely get himself tagged.
Take a ball off the back of the head at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Fortune. Right. There's nothing more for it than that. I don't think.
No.
Like you get lucky.
I think he also, if I remember correctly, Mitch Williams also either set or tied the record for wins in a month. He had like a 10 or 11 win month, if I remember correctly.
See, I guess as a reliever, if everything lines up for you just so, you could probably. What's the most wins you could conceive of? So, like 17, 18, maybe.
Oh, here you go. Okay, here it was. He won 8 ball games in a month, which was one off the record. But of course, the record was set back in the era when starters were throwing every second or third day. right?
Sure. So yeah, like 8 is a lot of wins. Like, 8's a lot of wins for a reliever in a season, let alone a month.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but if you got to manipulate things and arrange things just so, and maybe you were a team like the Angels where you should be really good but you aren't, so you're trailing in a lot of games that you could win, and like you just get really good at hitting your home runs in exactly the eighth inning. You
Well,
could you could
yeah. Well, the other thing that was crazy is that he was doing this like as a traditional closer.
sure.
So he wasn't, coming in, in the like in middle relief and then just, coming in a run behind or something. It
Right.
was a lot of using the
So he was like
closer. It was a lot of using the closer in a tie game and then coming back and, scoring kind of thing.
coming in the top of the ninth of the home game.
Yeah, it was a lot of that kind of thing.
Huh.
Because normally the other thing that can happen is
Oh yeah,
you're a
that's true.
closer and you keep blowing saves and then having the team come back and you get to vulture a win or something. But it wasn't even that kind of month.
At what point do you get promoted from vulture to like condor?
Yeah, I don't
All
know.
right, relief pitchers.
Okay,
We
all
can
right,
get through
that's a
this. I
good
have
one.
faith
Hold
in
on.
us.
Mitch Williams also holds the all-time major league record for the latest plate appearance.
Like 4 in the morning, late
Yeah,
or like
4:41 in the morning, in the second game of a doubleheader, walk-off single. Uh, yes,
he was the pitcher,
he was the
right?
pitcher. Yes,
Okay.
he was the pitcher, but
I was like, he was pitching in the National League. There's a planet on which he's out there hitting because they've run out of people. But
and that's what happens at 4:41 in the morning. In the 10th inning of the second game of a doubleheader, these things happen. All right, right. So these are some budget picks. So
I mean, the good news, and I'm using my context clues to realize this, is that he didn't have to go to sleep in the city of Philadelphia. So
no. He's on the home team.
how do you have the last plate appearance be a road team plate appearance?
No. He was the home team. I'm saying he was the home team. Yeah.
What do they just like call the game after that?
No, he was on the home team. They were playing in Philadelphia. It was a walk-off single. He was the hitter.
Okay, see, so that is
Yeah.
what I missed.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anyway, right.
Okay,
Some
yes,
budget relievers here. Budget
wonderful.
relievers. So really, most of the ones we just talked about are available, except Wohlers. Wohlers is still kind of a nice tournament special edition card. But really, most of the relievers here are gettable, and Steffen and Schreiber are simply live cards, so they'll be cheap and they're completely serviceable. So right, what are we actually running here? Let's see what we got. So I'm running something pretty similar to what Warbot recommends. I did manage to get a Wohlers in one of these perfect drafts, so that's kind of what I've been doing, and he's been really good. And it looks like you got a Wohlers as well, huh?
I also got a Wohlers for winning a thing because I'm really good at low diamond. Yeah, no, I actually recognize a lot of these cards, which is scary.
Yeah. That Dave
Oh
Righetti
wow,
is
that live.
interesting. What?
Forget the Rigetti. Look at the live Trevor Steffen.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an excellent card with the re-rate. A lot of the relievers, it felt like got rated way up this time around, to the point that I think at least two of them are probably playable just in league. Like Clase, I definitely have considered playing in league. There's probably a park in which you can play Edwin Diaz. It's definitely not mine.
Two ago, they significantly changed the overall for all of the relievers, and it feels like this week
Yeah.
they sort of changed the attributes to match, so that it feels sensible again, as opposed to just like, well, we don't like that you're running Eli Morgan as a pitcher and as starting pitcher in bronze, so he's a gold now. or whatever it was. Um,
It's true. Oh, and
yeah,
if anyone's looking for a Wohlers, by the way, there is an open perfect draft with a Wohlers available. So
there you go.
you can jump in perfect draft 5 and you can win yourself a Wohlers of your very own. Um,
You know you want to.
that is actually a good card. Um, yeah,
Oh, for
Minter
sure.
was playable. There are a couple others even in the lives that I still wish Diaz were more playable because I really want to see what 203 stuff can do against righties. Uh, the problem is, the rest of the card.
Oh, if my team rebounds from yesterday and this morning, I'll consider bringing him in for Saturday. But
Could see it.
I don't know. On the one hand, I wouldn't mind like not being in perfect league for a while and getting to play tournaments again. But also, I don't want to like grow to get there. This
Oh
competitive
yeah,
integrity is
exactly. No,
important.
I 100% wouldn't mind not being in perfect league because I think I have more fun with tournaments. But I think while I'm up there, I should like claw and scratch and try to stay up there.
Oh yeah,
Um, you know, but it's tough because I'm still free to play and I'm still coming in with probably a bottom 5 to 10 build in terms of card availability each week, and then trying to find like some trick that lets me survive another week. And that's one of those things that works every time but the last, right? So
uh, this is the end, right? Like we
I
made it
think
through,
so.
and
I think we
we're only
have.
like way over time and not way over time. So
That's not bad. All right. Any other
we'll take
things
it.
people want to ask about? Low diamond. What did we get to? Cricket.
Yeah,
Mitch Williams. The city of Philadelphia. I don't know.
we'll have like a 4 minute ask me anything here
And in the
and call it a
meantime, let me
quarter
see if
till.
there's somebody that we can raid.
Um, I think I am going to try to run silver again, just like absent-mindedly run some quick tournaments. So maybe
Let me
we
see.
will in fact come back around to that in a couple weeks.
What does the model
Did you
think
want
of
to?
Sutton? Let me. I don't remember seeing him, so let me run it a little bit deeper and take a look.
Did you want to tease next week's
Sure, yeah. So
special edition
next
show?
week we're thinking about doing a special edition show where the idea would be that we're going to create a format and we're going to kind of try to invite the community to run it and see how it goes. So we'll have more information about that, but that's kind of the plan if we can make it work.
It's true.
Looking for
We
Sutton.
we have guests on the show from time to time. Maybe slightly less often than we prefer. Looking at you, community. Get on here. Know more than us about this stuff. Talk about it. Um, but I think we're making good progress toward finding some extra special guests for next week's extra special stream. So uh, get it on your calendar. It's going to be a good time.
I can't find. I can't really find Sutton even in the top 50 or so. I'm surprised the card's that low. I guess the problem is the movement just seems to be too much of a problem the way Warbot's valuing it.
An open theme team is interesting, but also like one, how in the world do you train Warbot on that? And two, I think theme teams are a lot more fun when they're loosely competitive and not when you're trying to like come up with a theme with the purpose being to just like be the strongest theme.
Yeah, because I think the idea of the theme is you're trying to do something that kind of the constraints are fun, because otherwise the theme team could just be like Hall of Famers. Good, I win.
My theme is the best cards that I have.
But we'll try to come up with something fun, and we'll mention more about that for next week. Uh, so, all right. Well, I think that sounds like a good place to wrap up. So, I didn't find any other streams that have drops. I don't know if there's anyone that was about to kind of start something. Otherwise, there is one other streamer who has a total of 2 viewers that is doing an OTP 23 stream. So maybe we should all jump in there and like please be nice to them, because they're gonna have no idea what's coming.
Always fun. Yeah.
And we're looking forward to this net stream tonight. Oh, we could do Mr. Audit or actually, yeah, we've had a few people also in the main Discord that, kind of wanted to push back a little bit with the models and say, no, here are some things that, we think we can do better. That would also be a really fun thing to come on and kind of compare models or something like that. So
please come and do better.
Yeah.
That's good TV.
All right, I'm gonna try again. We're gonna jump in and raid someone that hopefully doesn't mind too much because they have a total of 2 viewers. But I guess be nice.
Kind. Let's make someone's day.
Yeah.
Even though he's got balls in his name.
Yes. All right.
Happy Thursday, everyone. See you in the official stream in 2.25 hours.
Sounds good.
Gosh, it's late.
All right. See you later. Bye.
Night, everybody.
Did the raid work?
Yes.
So then I just end the stream, and I think we'll be good.